Okay, so in this last lecture, we're going to talk about how we can know if a claim or a finding is valid because it used the appropriate steps in the scientific method. And so, what this really requires us to do is to be able to distinguish between what is actually science and what is pseudoscience. And the subcaption here is why you shouldn't believe everything that you read, right? Because some things seem scientific when they aren't. Okay, so what is pseudoscience? Really, how do we recognize it? Well, pseudoscience is a claim or a belief that appears to be scientific, but it isn't, either because it hasn't been tested scientifically, so it could be testable, but it hasn't been, um, or it simply can't be tested using the scientific method. Um, so, uh, as I mentioned, I can't test whether you have lived past lives or not. There's no way to scientifically test that. So believing in a past life would be considered pseudoscience. I can test whether you make specific or you have specific memory deficits that contribute to that belief. And there's actually some really interesting research that found that people who believe to have lived past lives suffer from a particular memory deficit, which is that they can't remember where their memories come from. So it's possible that I've watched a movie about Cleopatra, I remember it, and then I think that actually that it was a life that I lived as opposed to something I saw on television, for example. Right? So I can test that. I can test those memory deficits, but I can't test whether or not you've lived past lives. Right? And so some of these pseudoscientific claims could be tested, but they haven't been, probably because the truth is that they probably wouldn't pass muster, or they simply can't be tested. And so let me give you some examples, and I will be probably not terribly popular as a result of this. The first one being astrology. So a lot of people like to read their horoscopes. I find it entertaining myself, but there is no evidence to suggest that your horoscope is giving you information that is sufficiently meaningful that you should use it as a way to make decisions about your life, especially important life decisions. Um, the reason being is that astrology is written in such a way that the statements are really general, they can apply to anyone, and therefore we tend to believe that they're true because they can be true. They seem to be somewhat true of us. We also have a tendency to focus on those things that are true, and we tend to ignore those parts of it that aren't. So, an example would be something like, you are sometimes the life of the party, but other times you like to sit at home and be quiet. Now, this is probably true of just about everybody, right? You enjoy quiet evenings at home. Well, occasionally, that may be true, even if you're an extrovert who likes to go out. And so these general statements can apply to just about anyone. Other examples are graphology, palm reading, any of that kind of stuff, homeopathy. But some really kind of high profile examples were products that have been marketed uh, on television or otherwise. So the two that I want to mention, one is Enzyte. You might remember Smiling Bob, although she's not around very much anymore. Um, but this was a male enhancement supplement. Apparently, it was supposed to have a positive impact on men's morphology, if you will. But evidence actually suggested that it was completely ineffective, and um, a lot of people were spending a lot of money, and so they would be wasting money on something that was not effective. The other one, which I want to sort of talk about more because I have more information about, is Airborne, and that one you might actually be familiar with because it is marketed more widely. You see it in drugstores and Target and things like that. And so Airborne, when it first came out, was marketed as a supplement that you could take one time, and it would prevent you from getting sick. So if you were going to get on an airplane in the middle of flu season, you could take one of these Airborne tablets, and it would prevent you from getting sick. And its claim to fame was that that it had been developed by a second grade teacher. So Why is this pseudoscience? Well, the thing that we know about airborne is that, and they actually did cite scientific evidence to support their claims. Well, the thing about that is that the evidence that they cited was looking at individual um, elements or individual vitamins within airborne. Like, so they would look at sort of vitamins and minerals. So they look at calcium and, or vitamin C, and independently, these things have been shown in clinical trials to enhance immune functioning. Um, but number one, they were never shown to be effective for enhancing immune functioning in a single dose, but rather shown that over a period of time in taking these, having vitamin C delivered in a certain dose would have a positive impact on immune functioning. So, number one, that claim was false, that evidence supported its use as a single dose that could prevent illness. But the other thing was that so airborne itself was never scientifically tested as to sort of it was never scientifically tested to see if it actually um, could achieve the claim that it could prevent illness. And the reality is that it really couldn't. Now, why did people spend? This was a multi-million dollar product. People were buying it and using it and spending a fortune on it. And in fact, eventually somebody sued them for false advertising and won. And so Airborne actually had to change all of its packaging, all of its advertising, and basically was claiming that it was basically a daily vitamin that you could take that would help to support immune functioning. Now, why did people do it? Well, they did it not because of the scientific evidence that supported it, but because of the very clever marketing that it was developed by a second grade teacher. So, why would that be? Well, generally speaking, we know that children tend to be germ factories, right? And that if a second grade teacher can go into a classroom with a bunch of, kids who are with their runny noses and their slobbery, sticky hands and not get sick, then they have found the Holy Grail, right? And so it must be true because the second grade teacher said it was true. But really, what does the second grade teacher know about developing a supplement that prevents illness? Really nothing, right? And so that's part of why it's pseudoscience, because it appeared scientific, right? They used some evidence, but the evidence wasn't really supporting the use in the way they were saying it did. And they used um, as evidence, somebody who we would think of as an authority, right? We all remember our second grade teacher fondly. We see them as authority figures, and we made some assumptions about the fact that this individual who is exposed to illness all the time could come up with something that would theoretically work. Now, it could be tested scientifically, and had it been and shown to be supportive, then that would have been fine. But it wasn't, right? So Airborne no longer says that it can do that. And of course, it doesn't make as much money as it used to. The other is criminal profiling. Um, so a lot of us like to believe that criminal profiling, like the way we see in television, works. And that you can come up with this personality profile of an individual, and that it would help lead you to a particular criminal, and that would solve the case. But the truth is it doesn't work, and it isn't scientifically supported. And there's a number of reasons why we tend to like to believe in it, even though it, again, is pseudoscience. One is that it is done by a high status government agency, the FBI, right? We also have a bunch of television shows that illustrate criminal profiling. Um, and so if it's on TV, of course it must be true. And there are instances in which it has seemed to be effective for finding the correct suspect in high profile cases. But the truth is that just like astrology, the thing about criminal profiling is that people have a tendency to remember the parts of the profile that were correct, and they tend to forget the parts of the profile that were incorrect. And oftentimes they're pretty vague so that they could actually fit almost any situation, right? So just because criminal profiling was right in a specific instance in which they were able to catch a high profile criminal does not mean that it works often enough for us to have confidence in it as a tactic or a procedure. And the truth is that what we see on television is not what criminal profiling is at the FBI. All right, so then how do we recognize pseudoscience? Well, we can do that through developing healthy skepticism, right? So what I would encourage you to do when you read a claim, see something advertised or see a claim or something, is to ask, what is your evidence, right? Is the fact that Airborne was developed by a second grade teacher evidence of its effectiveness? I would say not. And besides which, it's far less interesting to have people tell you, well, let me tell you about the 500 clinical trials that we completed that showed that Airborne works. Rather, it's much more interesting, hey, think about this second grade teacher who deals with all those germy kids and how they take this supplement cocktail and it keeps them from getting sick. Woohoo, right? That's a much more interesting advertising claim. But under those conditions, we really need to question whether there is valid, sufficient, meaningful evidence to support its effectiveness. Then we need to evaluate the evidence, right? So is that evidence valid or not? Is it meaningful, right? So if we think about Airborne, right? So we said that there was some clinical evidence to suggest that each of the elements of Airborne have been shown in clinical trials to enhance immune functioning, but that combination was never tested together. So what if combining two vitamins or minerals work against one another? So for example, calcium interferes with the absorption of iron, right? So if we have both calcium and iron in a supplement, maybe they're making one another less effective. So it may not be harmful, but the fact that it doesn't work as it claims could be harmful, right? So for example, what if someone with HIV decided that Airborne was going to help them avoid getting the flu or a cold rather than using more effective strategies? And by the way, the most effective strategy is hand washing, which we've heard a lot about these days. Because Airborne's less expensive, right? Or easier. So, as I said, we need to evaluate the evidence. So, is the evidence based on anecdotes? Is it a celebrity who's selling it? And is there research that has been repeated to show that it works? Now, why should you care, right? What's the harm? So what? So somebody spent $5 on a box of Airborne and it didn't work. The answer is that number one, you're wasting money on a product that didn't work. And again, you're not doing things that have been scientifically shown to be effective, right? So the number one most effective way to prevent illness is by washing your hands. And if you think that I can go around, touch every doorknob and railing, and then take Airborne, and that's going to make me healthy, you're more likely to get sick under those circumstances. Okay, so that's the end of our lectures on the scientific method.